It's 10 minutes after the hour of 6 o'clock. We're looking at a Friday morning, the 17th day of February 2023. Mark Size here in studio at 2207 7th Street, the home of KLYN and Cornerstone Church services this Sunday at 10 o'clock in the morning. Live services, real people, real message, real worship. Real hands to shake and nicks to hug. 8 degrees is our current temperature. Currently, we do not have any wind, so we can't say like we did 10 minutes ago that it was -1 wind chill because that is not on the weather scene right now, but that could change, as we all know, from 1 minute to another. Andrea's with us already, and Charlene, that Charlene girl, she is an early riser, and she's a feisty one too at the same time. We'll talk about your first question on Sunday, Charlene. We are in the book of Ecclesiastes, which Mr. Missler, if you listen to 6640 at 8:30 in the morning, 8:30 in the evening here on KLYN, just finished yesterday. In fact, Mr. Missler is going to be getting into 1st and 2nd Peter over the next few weeks on his program. So that's just some programming notes. Also, another programming note. And on Fridays, we cut off our program a little bit before 7 o'clock because I have men's fellowship at 7 o'clock in the morning. I already got food already out. It looks, well, I don't know. We could have carne adobada and eggs, bacon and eggs, and maybe even chorizo and eggs, and let's see what else shows up. But I got some carne adobada that I think that's probably where we'll go. Anyway, good morning, good morning, good morning. I'm glad to be along with you this morning. This chapter that we're in right now, chapter 3, and let me tell you this, is that prayer line is available for you till 8 o'clock in the morning at 505 310 9658. Okay, so that's we're going to take that off. I'm trying to do the editing part and at the same time read some of the comments that are coming in. Okay, Erica showed up, and then we have our Springer Jennifer from Springer showed up. Okay. I just did a coconut or whatever that means. Okay, now I encourage the comments. You guys, you comment to each other, comment to me. Throw some scriptures in there, some of your own thoughts on where we're at, and we are in the 3rd chapter of the book of Ecclesiastes. Yesterday, okay, and the day before, we keep hammering away on the main point. Everything under the sky, let's go back, okay, so I can say it right, okay. Under the sun, everything under the sun is vain according to the preacher. He's looked at it all. He's trying it all. He's experiencing it all. And yesterday we saw about 3 different experiences he went through, and he still comes to the same conclusion. But he's going to keep on trying. I mean, everything is vain. Everything is empty. Everything under the sun, ladies and gentlemen. We're not talking about second heaven, third heaven, because we have a third heaven out there that there is no emptiness in it at all. And you have to realize that in this under the sun phrase that we're using, God created everything that's under the sun. And he has a purpose for everything. And I know that homeboy was just, going through a phase in his life and, everything was kind of sour. Well, there's a balance. And I'm big and trying to always establish balance in my life, especially between where I am and where I'm going, what the life that I'm living with the life that I know that God has placed in each and every one of us who have come to faith in Him. And I just see Solomon completely out of balance in his life. My theory is that Solomon got a little out of balance in his life. And that's where this book of Ecclesiastes come from. To everything there is a season. Oh, now we want to sing the birds. Wasn't it the birds in the 60s? BYRDS. Or was it the mamas and the papas? Somebody help me out over there. Who was it that sang Ecclesiastes chapter 3 in a song in the rock era? To everything there is a season. A time for every purpose under heaven. That's what I've been trying to tell you. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck what is planted, a time to kill and going on, a time for this and a time for that. So the question is that I have to ask myself, and the question that I want you to consider is, what time is it? Because if there's a time for everything and a season for everything, do we recognize the times and the seasons that we are in? The Bible tells us that there was a time in the history of Israel where the men of Issachar, the tribe of Issachar, knew the time. They knew what Israel should do. They had that prophetic anointing on them. They knew what time it was. Well, you say, oh, duh, it's 17 minutes after the hour. Okay, yeah, I'll get that. But do you know what time it is? Do you know what the spiritual time in your life is? Do you know what spiritual season you're going through? Because I think, and maybe, God allows a lot of things that we have a hard time with. Maybe God allowed Solomon to go through this, I'm going to call it, and excuse me, this dark time in his life to minister unto the generations to come all the way to where Jesus comes back again through his word, to realize that you can't put all your stock in this world, that everything under the sun, it's, we hold it in our hands, but don't hold it with a tight grip. To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven. Purpose is big in our life. Do you realize that God has given each and every one of you a unique purpose in your life to intertwine with others and to see how the bigger purpose of God will be realized? To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die. And since we're on the subject, it's not for man to know when and how a person should be born and when a time to die. But man is trying to control that in our society today. Picking and choosing. Oh, yeah, we're even talking about HB7. HB7 is that bill that's going through in the legislature currently right now. They're halfway through the session, and I keep seeing it on the House calendar, and every day I say, well, it's on the calendar. I guess they're going to discuss it today, but it doesn't go much further. I think they're waiting for us to go to sleep so that they can slip it in, is what I think. But I've been around for a while. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck what is planted. Now let's talk about this. A time to plant and a time to pluck what is planted. If we don't know what the season, if we don't know what the time is, if we plant at the wrong time, and your expectations are way sky high, almost all the way up to the sun, because we're all talking about everything that is under the sun. If you plant at the wrong time, You're not going to pluck what is planted when it's time to pluck it. There's a time to plant and a time to pluck what. I think I need to continually evaluate in my life what time, what season I am in. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to gain, a time to lose. And if we understand the times and the season that we are in, there's going to be joy and peace in our lives. God will allow you to go through seasons in your life that you might not understand. In fact, let me tell you my experiences. I can almost say to a season, almost every season I've gone through in my life that God has taken me through, I don't know what the heck he was doing till almost to the end of the season. Let's say there was a 2-year season that I was going through in one area of my life, and many times the seasons that God would be taking me through, I can think of a few particular seasons, and I was fighting against the season, not knowing it was God allowing me to go through it. And then later on, toward the end of the season, then all of a sudden, the light bulb went on. I said, oh, you've been trying to do this in my life. There was a season, listen, there was a season for Israel to go through the wilderness. There was a time for them to come out of Israel. And this is our story, because there was a time for each and every one of us to come out of out of Egypt. Did I say it wrong a second time? There was a time for us to come out of Egypt the same way the children of Israel in the time of Moses, it was their season to come out. And then it was their season to be in the wilderness. Here's the issue about the wilderness. The wilderness was not designed by God to be a 40-year season. It turned into a 40-year season because the people bucked at the gate when they got there. When it was time for them to enter in, keep on noticing how we're saying time, the season was about 2 years from the time that they left Egypt till they went to Mount Sinai, till they traveled through the wilderness, and they went up to a city called Kadesh Barnea, which was right there at the border, entering into the promised land. It was designed by God for them just to go through and then to enter in, but because of their disobedience and because of their lack of faith, they had to go out into the wilderness for another 38 years, and a whole new generation was raised in the wilderness. But my point is that they didn't know their season. They send 12 spies in. 2 of them come in with a good report. 10 of them come in with a bad report. They decide they're going to side with the 10 that had the bad report. So they missed their season. They missed their time. Do you want to miss your time? I don't think you do. But there's a time for everything. There's a time to weep. That's what it says there, verse 4. A time to weep and a time to laugh. Just don't get caught too much in one over the other. Don't find yourself out of balance. Time to weep. There's people that pass away in our lives. There's people, mom and daddy and brothers and sisters, and, go on down, people that you love, and we grieve. But just a time, and it's just a season. Same way it is with laughter. We talked about mirth yesterday. We were getting some very good reports on the comment section yesterday on what mirth was. There was some good. You can check it out on yesterday's program on our YouTube channel or on our Facebook page and look at the comment section and see what we talked about mirth. A time to mourn and a time to dance. And notice how these are kind of opposites of each other. I don't think it takes a rocket science to figure it out. That when it's time to mourn, you don't dance, and when it's time to dance, you don't mourn. And not the yeah. A time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones. That's an interesting one. Cast away stones. Why would we be casting away stones, and why would we be gathering them? A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to gain and a time to lose. It looks like Solomon was playing the stock market, you know. Anybody know? Yeah, there's a time to gain and there's a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to throw away. For all of us that want to keep holding on to time, there's a time to keep it. There's a time to look at it and say, man, I haven't used that in 15 years. Put it out on the curb, baby. Maybe we can give it to somebody.
My heart, into my heart, come into my heart, Lord Jesus, come in today, come in to stay, come into my heart, Lord Jesus.
Fairest Lord Jesus, ruler of all nature, O thou of God and man the Son, thee will I cherish, thee will I honor, thou my soul's glory, joy, and crown.
Fair is the sunshine, fairer still the moonlight, and all the twinkling starry hosts.
time for us to get into a weather report. I'm going to put that one up just a little bit more for Andrea out there. And we're going to get into our weather report. Looking for a high today around 48. It looks pretty good. Currently, it's only the 8. We need the 40 to come along with it. Partly cloudy today, high near 48. Northeast wind at 11 miles per hour. Saturday, 52 degrees with partly cloudy skies. Southwest wind 11 to 28 and gusts up to 39 miles per hour. And on Sunday, partly cloudy, high near 52. Very windy, west wind 24 to 30 with gusts up to 41 miles per hour on Sunday, and maybe some chances of precipitation on Monday. We'll talk more about that later on in this week because it's not completely over with. Let's go back to our Bible for today. Let's remind you that we have prayer line that's open at 505-310-9658. Here's what I was thinking during that last break. and I'm a good one. Procrastination. Talk about it. I'm sure it comes up in our lives all the time. Do we know the season that we're in? Time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones. Time to embrace, a time to refrain. I know that it's time to tear, or what was the one that was I was looking at? Verse 6, a time to gain, a time to lose, a time to keep, and a time to throw away. We keep on building bigger sheds. Anybody out there? No, maybe you're not. Maybe you're the person that says, man, you know what? I'm taking that to the thrift store. I'm selling it over there in the swap shop, whatever it is. I'm getting rid of it. My kids would be laughing at me they'd be laughing at me right now. Okay. A time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate. Say, no, it's never time. Oh, hate evil, my brothers and sisters, in a time of war and a time of peace. And our responsibility is to partner with the Lord God Almighty and let the spirit of prophecy come upon us and let us know what time it is. And here's another thing. When you know that it's your time to do something, don't let anybody talk you out of it. Don't let those 10 spies come in and talk you out of the season that you're in. My thinking about Joshua and Caleb, who were the 2 spies that had the good report when they went into the promised land, but still it wasn't enough to keep them out of the wilderness, that they still had that God kind of faith throughout the 38 years, because you're going to know is that Joshua and Caleb, of all the people that were there that day, were some of the few that entered into the promised land. Most of them died, including Moses and his brother Aaron and his sister Miriam. Most of them died in the wilderness. So know your time, know your season. Don't let anybody talk to you about it, and know that it's your season in God. But let's not procrastinate at the same time. Verse 9. Yeah, you thought I was going to talk more about what time is this and what time is that, didn't you? What profit has the worker from that which is he labors? I have seen the God-given task, verse 10, with which the sons of men are to be occupied. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has put eternity in their hearts, except that no one can find out the work that God does from beginning to end. Okay, so you're a little sour on life. You're not seeing the bigger picture. You're not allowing yourself, as we looked at Colossians, wasn't Colossians chapter 3 yesterday, to set your affection on things above, not on things of the earth. So we've violated that one and find ourselves just concentrating on what's under the sun and all the vanity that life has. What profit has the worker from that which he labors? It's a question. Okay? You go out to work, you punch the clock, or you show up, you've got a contract, whatever it is, but you do what you're supposed to do. What profit has the worker in that which he labors? Okay, well, his remark is, I have seen the God-given task which the sons of men are to be occupied. And, if we're talking just about labor, we're just talking just about work, I believe that work is a form and should be a form of worship. Your job should be a form of worship. Good morning, Corrine and Mike. Good morning. They're showing up. I think I saw, Jana's on with us today. I don't see the Santa Fe people here yet. Maybe they're just listening. I have seen the God-given task which the sons of men are to be occupied. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has put eternity in their hearts, except that no one can find out the work that God does from the beginning. I think the Message had an interesting twist on that 11th verse. True, God made everything beautiful in itself and in its time, but he left us in the dark so we can never know what God is up to, whether he's coming or going. I cannot, let me make sure that we're saying it right, I cannot completely agree with that statement. I know that God has a lot of things that are out there that he's doing that maybe that we're missing. But if we know our time, if we are walking in the God-appointed season for us, look at, he made everything beautiful in its time and has put eternity in their hearts. That's an important scripture to realize, is that God has put eternity. I can agree with that side, that God has put eternity. Everybody's looking, everybody's asking the same question. What's it all about? That's what Solomon is asking. What's it all about? Just from an earthly viewpoint, what's it all about? I know that nothing is better for them than to rejoice and to do good in their lives, and also that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all of his labor. It is the gift of God. You go to work for a purpose. You receive that check for a purpose. That every man should eat and drink, enjoy the good of his labor is the gift of God. And we enjoy it with our families. Hopefully you're enjoying it with your families, and there's peace and there's goodness there. I know that whatever God does, it shall be forever. Nothing can be added to it, nothing taken from it. God does it, and that men should fear before him. Here we are talking about the fear of God again. We went through it all through the Proverbs, talking about wisdom and the fear of God. What is the fear of God? Let's read verse 15, and then we'll let you process that one for a little while. That which is has already been, and what is to be has already been, and God requires an account of what is past. But that men should fear before him. Okay? We talked about fear yesterday. The fear of man is a snare. We always talk about the fear of God. What is the fear of God? Is the fear of God to be afraid of God? If I'm afraid of God, I'm not going to pray. If I'm afraid of God, I'm not going to ask him to bring revival. If I'm afraid of God, I'm not going to ask him to show up in my life or on a Sunday service. If I'm afraid of God, but let me tell you what the fear of God is. For me, the fear of God is to be separated away from him. That's the fear. The fear of God for me is that I would walk away or separate myself from the presence of God. That's something that once you have, he's put eternity in our hearts, ladies and gentlemen. But that's getting out of the, anyway. I know that whatever God does, it shall be forever. Nothing can be added to it. Verse 14, nothing taken from it. God does it that men should fear before him. That which is has already been. And that, and no, and not that, and what is to be has already been. And God requires an account of what is past. And even in the second chapter, maybe even in the first, I'm not sure, I can think of it right now, but looks like Solomon was having some hard time with the cycles of life. A lot of cycles in this life that we're living. A lot of cycles that we miss many times. Even signs of the times have their cycles. Talked a little bit about that yesterday. God's created it all for us. Do you think God created it for himself? Moreover, okay, we'll keep on talking. Solomon, keep on. Moreover, I saw under the sun. How many times did we see that phrase, under the sun, throughout the whole book? Yeah, you thought I'd remember that, didn't you? Okay. Okay, on the New King James, we find out that it's only that phrase under the sun in the book of Ecclesiastes, and 27 verses, 29 times is that comes up in the 12 chapters of this book. Moreover, -4, huh? In Santa Fe, wind chill -4. We had a -1 or so about 5 o'clock in the morning, but it's not much wind right now. Back to verse 16, Ecclesiastes 3:16. Moreover, I saw under the sun, in the place of judgment, wickedness was there, and in the place of righteousness, iniquity was there. I said in my heart, God shall judge the righteous and the wicked, for there's a time, for there's a purpose for every good work. He says, I'm looking around the sun, and I'm going to the place of judgment, where rules and laws are made and kept, or judged. Maybe they're not kept. He says, I saw under the sun in the place of judgment, where you would expect everything to be according to rule. There was wickedness there. In the place of righteousness, iniquity was there. What's the place of righteousness? Yeah. Well, today's terms would be the church. In the place of there iniquity, there's it's not all wickedness in the place of judgment. It's not all wickedness in the place of righteousness. I said in my heart, God shall judge the righteous and the wicked. For there is a time there for every purpose and for every work. So Solomon realizes that, there's a lot of compromise here and there, that it's not always what it's supposed to be. The purpose is not always realized. But he realizes one thing, that there's the time. And our issue many times with God is that we want him to do it when we want him to do it. God shall judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time there. I'm reading real quick today because the thoughts are firing in my mind. For there is a time there for every purpose and every work. I said in my heart concerning the condition of the sons of men, God tests them that they may see that they themselves are like animals. Somebody help me out with that one. God tests them to see that they themselves are like animals. Maybe the Amplified would say something. I said to myself regarding the sons of men, surely God is testing them in order for them to see that by themselves, without God, they are only animals. Okay. Now notice that the brackets in the Amplified Bible are commentary. Okay, that's not translation. The Message, I said to myself regarding the human race, God's testing a lot of us, showing us up as nothing but animals. I don't agree with that one. I mean, not that we're voting on on every one of these verses over here, but I believe that God tests us. I believe that He allows His Word to test us. And I believe that if we get too big for our britches, He's going to let us know we're just who we are right now. Don't get too big for yourself. There were kings like Nebuchadnezzar in the Old Testament that got a little bit too big for his britches. And God made him like an animal. He went through that season in his life. For what happens to the sons of men also happens to animals. One thing befalls them, as one dies, so dies the other. Surely they all have one breath. Man has no advantage over animals, for all is vanity. He's gotten a little sour on life. And in a way, there's parts of us that are like the animals. And yes, we do all live, and we all die, and we all breed, and we all are birthed, and sooner or later it's all over with, and we all breathe the same air. But there's a difference in the eyes of God between man and the animals. All go to one place. Don't even say that, because now the dog lovers are going to say, there's a place in heaven for Sparky. I told you there was one. All go to one place. All are from the dust, and all return to dust. Who knows the spirit of the sons of men, which goes upward, and the spirit of the animal, which goes down to the earth? It's just about time you thought about, having a doggy heaven doctrine. Probably should have read a little bit further before you do that. But I just, think we're just taking some things just a little bit too serious and other things not serious enough. For what happens to the sons of men also happens to animals. One thing befalls them as one dies, so dies the other. Surely all have one breath. Man has no advantage over the animals, for all is vanity. All go into one place. All are from the dust, and all return to the dust. If you're looking at it from under the sun, specifically and only, who knows the spirit of the sons of men which goes upward? Who knows the spirit of an animal which goes down to the earth? I think I know what the answer to that question is. So I perceive that nothing is better than that a man should rejoice in his own works, for that is his heritage, for who can bring him to see what will happen after him? If you're mad at God, well, then you just can't answer a lot of those questions. Let's flip the chapter over here. Then I returned. You said, you're going to go into, I got a few minutes more. We could go into another chapter this morning. We could at least start it. Don't get caught up all the time in chapters and verses. Those were put in only a few hundred years ago. The Bible was written thousands of years ago, and it wasn't written in chapters and in verses. Look at the letters Paul to the churches. They were not written in chapters and verses. It was one continuous letter that he wrote to them. And a monk a few hundred years ago, I think 500 years ago or so, decided it'd be a good idea to make it easy for you and I to find our place. But don't get caught up in it like if it's the end of one thought and the beginning of another. Sometimes it is, sometimes it ain't. Then I returned. See, notice how it's, then I returned and considered all the oppression that is done under the sun. Oh my God. Look at the title over that chapter. Evil under the sun. I returned and considered all the oppression that is done under the sun. Returned from where? And look, the tears of the oppressed, but they have no comforter. On the side of their oppressors there is power, but they have no comforter. Under the sun. Doesn't say that. I added the under. Therefore I praise the dead who are already dead more than the living who are still alive. So are you the person that looks at the obituary and says, lucky guy, he's gone. Lucky guy, he don't have to put up with all this stuff anymore. Well, luck has little to do with it. Preparation has everything to do with it. Therefore, I praise the dead who are already dead more than the living who are still alive. Yet better than both is he who has never existed. Oh my God. Who has not seen the evil work that is done under the sun. Again, I saw that for all toil and every skillful work a man is envied by his neighbor. This also is vanity and grasping for the wind. It's better than both he, verse 3. Somebody take the bottle away from him. That's what I'm saying. Take that fifth away from that guy. Yet better is both is he who has never existed. Oh, yeah, better. Well, if he has not existed, he's not a he, Solomon. He's a nothing. A contradictory statement according to my understanding of verse 3. It's better than both he who has never existed, who has not seen the evil work that is done under the sun. Here you go. I wish I would have never been born. This life is too rough. Without Jesus, if all we're looking at is just what's available to us under the sun, we're going to come to some of these conclusions. And remember, and I would encourage some of you to look at yesterday's program on YouTube or on Facebook, where we talked about the carnal mindset. There's the natural, the carnal, and the spiritual mind. And we fall into either one of those categories. We can be in relationship. We can be saved. Let me say it more terms. We can be saved and still be carnal at the same time. Again, I saw, Teresa, somebody is outing you on the comment section. You're a bestie there. Again, I saw that for all toil and every skillful work a man is envied by his neighbor. This also is vanity and grasping for the wind. They just don't get along. Nobody. No. Notice how we say many times, nobody cares. That's not true. Maybe a lot of people don't, okay? But to say that nobody cares, that's what I read verse 4. The fool folds his hands and consumes his own flesh. We talked about the fool a lot in the book of Proverbs. Better a handful with quietness than both hands full together with toil and grasping for the wind. It says, then I returned and saw the vanity under the sun. There is no one alone without companion. He has neither son nor brother, yet there is no end to all his labors, nor his eyes satisfied with the riches. But he never asks, for whom do I toil and deprive myself of good? This also is vanity and grave for misfortune. You say, well, what are you getting out of this? I don't know what I'm getting. I know what I'm getting out of this. I'm asking you, what are you getting out of this? If your eye is bad, did Jesus say something about if your eye is bad, everything's bad? If you're looking at it just through, and I think we all have our filters of how we see everything that goes along. That's why we talk about worldviews occasionally. The importance of knowing the worldview. But this one guy, he ain't got nobody. He's all by himself. No brothers. But I guess two are better than one because they have a good reward for their labor. They will, for if they fall, one will lift up his companion. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, for he has no one to help him. The Beatles said it. Yeah, they did. Cry, baby, cry. Make your mother sigh. You're old enough to know better, but cry, baby, cry. Again, I don't know. Again, if two lie down together, they will keep warm, but how can one be warm alone? I could use that scripture for the Samaritan house. Though one may be overpowered by another, two can withstand him, and a threefold cord is not quickly broken. So the sense is that it's better to have some good friends, or better than no friend at all. No man is an island. Better a poor and a wise youth than an old and foolish king who will be admonished no more. Okay, well, we better put our, where do we go up to? Verse 13. Running out of time. Going to finish off our program. Going to let you know that before we go that there is a prayer line that is open for you right now at 505-310-9658. If you're that person that is feeling down on life, maybe you better call that prayer line. Scott Underwood taking us up to the top of the hour with Take My Life Sunday sermon coming up.